How did a young boy from a quiet, rural town literally rewrite the English language? Well, today in this explainer, we're unpacking an extraordinary story drawn right from our source material. We're looking at the journey of one single individual whose life, through all of its bitter struggles and towering triumphs, fundamentally shaped the very way we communicate, think, and even express ourselves today.
I mean, think about it for a second. Can you imagine one person changing how we speak English? Language is usually this massive thing forged by centuries of history, shifting empires, and huge cultural movements. Yet over 400 years ago, this one guy managed to leave a permanent fingerprint on the words we use every single day. It sounds almost impossible, right? But as our source highlights, that is exactly what happened.
We're talking about words that made people laugh, words that made people cry, and words that eventually traveled across the entire globe. These weren't just, functional, boring words. They were crafted with such raw emotional power that they resonated across centuries. And they were all written by William Shakespeare. So who really was the man behind the myth, and how did he actually pull this off? Part 1. A Boy from Stratford. The Humble Beginnings. The story kicks off in 1564. He was born to John, a struggling glovemaker, and Mary, who actually came from a moderately well-off family with some land. As a kid, William went to a local grammar school where he just felt deeply in love with Latin, ancient mythology, and the rhythm of poetry. But things got tough. His family's finances took a really dark turn, so as a teenager, he had to make the agonizing choice to drop out of the school he loved just to help his struggling dad survive. And then, virtually overnight, William wasn't just a teenager sweeping floors anymore. He was a young father bearing the massive weight of a rapidly growing family. He'd married Anne Hathaway when he was just 18, and together they welcomed a daughter, Susanna, and then twins, Hamnet and Judith. So picture this. You've got 3 young kids to feed and a desperate, burning need for opportunity. Suddenly, that quiet town of Stratford started to feel like an inescapable dead end.
Part 2. The Leap to London. Crossing the Threshold.
So he makes a massive leap. He traded the quiet rivers and slow pace of Stratford for a totally different universe. London in the late 1500s was just a massive sensory overload. It was incredibly noisy, absolutely filthy, and genuinely dangerous, with disease running rampant through these packed cobblestone streets. But it was also electrifying. It was the epicenter of a brand new, wildly popular entertainment industry. Theaters were exploding in popularity, and the air was just bursting with unprecedented possibility. Now, London didn't just hand him a stage and a willing audience. No way. He arrived as a total nobody, with absolutely zero connections. He had to hustle intensely just to survive. He started at the very bottom of the theatrical food chain, grinding away at menial tasks for established actors. Imagine him just sweeping the stage, running petty errands, and quietly observing exactly how the machinery of the theater worked, way before he ever picked up a quill to write his own simple plays.
Part 3. Mastering the Stage. Writing the Human Experience.
Once he finally found his footing, his creative output was just staggering. But what made him immortal wasn't just how much he wrote, it was his unprecedented ability to capture the raw human condition. Instead of just writing about distant, unrelatable royalty, he infused ordinary human flaws into extraordinary situations. He gave us the reckless, all-consuming passion of youth in Romeo and Juliet, the paralyzing weight of choice in Hamlet, the corrosive nature of unchecked ambition in Macbeth, and the absurd, magical hilarity of love in A Midsummer Night's Dream. But his absolute mastery of language wasn't just confined to the booming voices of tragic kings on a stage. He brought that exact same profound insight to the quiet, intimate form of the sonnet. In these deeply beautiful 14-line poems, he managed to capture the delicate essence of romance, the merciless march of time, and the breathtaking fragility of life itself. It really proved he could bend language to his will and evoke deep emotion in literally any format he touched. The central hub where all this daily magic happened was the Globe Theatre. It was this massive, round wooden structure, totally open to the unforgiving English sky. If it rained, well, both the actors and the audience got entirely soaked. But here is the really profound cultural insight. Nobody cared. You had wealthy nobles sitting in the covered galleries, and poor workers standing elbow to elbow in the muddy yard, all braving the elements together.
The theater became this brilliant, democratic equalizer simply because the stories were just too good to miss. So what was his ultimate secret weapon? Well, unlike a lot of writers who sat isolated in quiet little studies, Shakespeare was also an actor. And that is a massive distinction. Because he actually performed on those wooden boards, he intimately understood the physical rhythm, the timing, and the exact movement needed to hold thousands of people spellbound. He knew what it felt like to look right into an audience's eyes. He deeply understood human fear, fragile hope, and our tragic mistakes, and he baked that lived empathy directly into every single character. Part 4. Returning home to Stratford. The final act. Eventually, he returned to his rural hometown, a fundamentally changed and incredibly wealthy man. Over his career in London, he achieved a mind-blowing lifetime output. We're talking 37 plays and 154 sonnets. But, he wasn't just some brilliant, starving artist. He was actually a remarkably shrewd businessman. He negotiated shares in his theater company, bought vast amounts of property, and steadily funneled real wealth back to his family in Stratford, securing their financial future for generations. His life had truly come full circle, but it wasn't just a simple, perfectly happy ending. Back in Stratford, he did find quiet peace, living in a grand home with his surviving daughters. Yet he carried a deep, unshakable grief, the tragic loss of his only son, Hamnet, who had died years earlier at just 11 years old. Shakespeare lived out his final days carrying this intense paradox, having tremendous worldly success and an unmatched legacy while quietly bearing unimaginable personal tragedy, before he passed away in 1616 at the pretty young age of 52. Part 5. A lasting English legacy. The words we speak today. It is genuinely wild to think that a 16th century playwright working by candlelight with a feather quill still actively dictates our modern vernacular. As our source material beautifully puts it, when we speak English, we speak a little bit of Shakespeare. Over 4 centuries later, his specific phrasing crosses oceans, translates into countless global languages, and continues to make us feel the exact emotions he originally intended. And the reason his legacy is so uniquely powerful is because he wasn't afraid to stretch, break, and totally reinvent the language to make it sing. He literally invented everyday words that we use all the time: lonely, generous, excitement. Those words simply did not exist in the English language until William Shakespeare decided he needed them to tell a better, more accurate story. He understood that human nature is universal, and he gave us the very vocabulary we still use to express our deepest selves. Which leaves us with a really profound, lingering thought, drawn from his extraordinary journey. If one boy from a small, quiet town, who had to drop out of school and hustle in a dirty city, can change the entire world with just his words, how will you use your own voice today? What story will you tell?